Hola, and welcome to People and the Intranet, the importance of people to leading intranets, some of the very best intranets, in fact, on the planet. And we're talking today about the role of executives, employees, managers, and even the staff that manage and maintain these intranets. If you're listening to the podcast version of today's webinar, you can view the full video replay and slides that accompany today's broadcast via our YouTube channel or at intranetblog.com. I'm your host, Toby Ward, founder of Prescient Digital Media, the intranet experts since 2001. That's how long we've been doing intranets. In fact, I've been doing them since 1997. It's been quite the evolution. Probably not as quick as I'd like to see, but things like recessions and COVID, they've slowed the progress down just a little bit, as I'm sure some of you have noticed. We do everything at Prescient Digital Media from concept to live, assessment, planning, design, launch, build, even help operate intranets. Our mantra is listen, understand, deliver. So if you need a hand with your intranet, feel free to give us a call or a shout or drop me a line. Always free to chat and brainstorm. And thank you to some of our great clients over the years for sustaining this business. Now, think about the typical intranet. This is going to sound familiar to some of you. Here are some of the common refrains that I hear all the time. It's old, it's terrible, I can't find anything. I mostly use email. Some of you are probably familiar with these refrains and complaints with your intranet. Not to worry, that's why we're here. So think about, as we go through this today, does everyone know who owns the intranet? Is it comms? Is it HR? Is it IT? Is there a name attached to that? Is it printed somewhere on the intranet, online? Do you have detailed content policies, a content management plan? Can anyone publish or submit content for review? Are there rules for doing so? Does content have an expiry date? I want you to think about what I call the nexus of intranet success. Many years ago, I developed this as sort of a framework to think about the intranet when planning out an intranet. Because one successful intranet doesn't necessarily look like the other. So I can show you lots of screenshots like I did last month with our webinar, which you can go and view the recording from at prescientdigital.com. There's a link on the homepage. But every organization's a little bit different. Every culture is a little bit different. Employees expect different things. Business expects different things. Your executives expect different things. So it's a mistake just to go and look at another intranet and copy it. What you need, first and foremost, more important than anything, is the people involved with the internet, because people equal success. As I am fond of saying, technology is just an enabler. It's mostly about people and process, not the least of which are executives and senior management, and then motivated employees, motivated users. They need to know what it will do for them, why it's of benefit to the organization as a whole, and senior management needs to know this as well. In between, we call it the foundation: planning, resources, content, technology. Again, not quite as important as the people involved, because what are people going to the intranet for? They're going for content. It may be a phone number or something within an app or a tool, but they're usually after a form, a policy, some sort of a document, could be a phone number, benefits update, pay stub. Ultimately, it's content, and ultimately, it's put there by people. And there is no one more important to the intranet and the success of an intranet than the executive champion. The executive champion is a C-level executive or someone at the table, whether it's a managing director or a CEO or whatever it's called in your organization. They have power and control. They've got budget, and they've got influence across the organization, not the least of which would be your CEO or managing director. And they understand the value of the intranet and its potential. They need only attend an occasional meeting or a briefing, but ultimately they're your ambassador, your lobbyist at the executive table, ultimately the source of funding. And they can be very involved in the form of a regular blogger or a regular meeting attender, or again, just someone who's kept in the loop and who knows and trusts what you're doing as an intranet manager, supports the process, the vision, and the direction. Or they could be extremely hands-on, like Mike Morris, who was the chairman and CEO of AEP, who had this blog that he wrote, and this was some years ago, but it's still the best example of an employee-facing blog by a CEO or president that I've ever come across. Won't go into too many details here, but you can check out and read more about it when the slides or the video replay come out tomorrow. The biggest key to success, that C-level executive, right? They don't need to be involved on a day-to-day basis, but they do need to understand the value and potential and support you with the money, with the power, with the influence. But you also need to know what makes them sing, what makes them talk. You need to talk their talk, walk their walk. So, is it employee engagement? Is it employee satisfaction? Is it hits? Is it ROI? Is it productivity savings or benefits or time to market for the organization? You need to cater to them to get them on board. Because usually the intranet is not driven by the leader of your organization. It's driven by you in communications or IT or HR. So if that's the case and you're making a proposal or business case for a new intranet, you need to walk that walk and talk that talk and cater to them appropriately. Because if it's about ROI in dollars and cents, then there better be a cost benefit analysis involved. And you should probably check out our white paper called Finding ROI through the download section at prescientdigital.com. Governance is tantamount to success. I'll repeat that. Governance is tantamount to success. At the top of your governance, of course, is your executive champion. Now, typically, if for a lot of intranets, there hasn't been a formal governance model. I'm sure if I held a poll now and I said to all of you, raise your hand if you have a formal governance model that's well defined with supporting policies that spells out the roles and responsibilities and all, and the ownership structure like this. Almost no one would say, I'd maybe get one or two folks. That's because, generally speaking, intranets have grown organically, decentralized, no single owner, everyone doing their own thing. And then it kind of shifted with someone taking it over, really centralized governance. IT was launching it, they were controlling it, or maybe it was communications, and highly controlled, gatekeeper, tough to get stuff done because everything's got to go through one person or one group. Modern governance, you've got collaborated or collaborative federated, where there's a steering council or a steering committee that runs it. But more often than not, especially with bigger organizations, we're recommending what I have called for maybe 20 years, the centralized hybrid model. The centralized hybrid model has a day-to-day owner, and an executive champion, but there still is some form of committee or maybe multiple committees involved representing multiple areas. It could be a technical committee, a content committee, operations committee, an advisory committee with employee users. This combination of a day-to-day owner or owners or co-owners and still a committee that allows representation from other parts of the organization. Why is this important? Well, the bigger your organization is, the more political it is, the more that people want to be heard, and the more content that is needed to get out there and to be shared. But there has to be rules for this, right? There has to be roles and responsibilities and accountability for it. And therefore, you need that model that says, here's what we're doing, here's who's responsible for what are they responsible for, and the do's and don'ts for everyone involved. So usually there is a champion or two. This was the example given. It's a banking client of ours with some 30,000 employees. In this case, the champions were a COO and a CIO. The day-to-day owner was the head of internal communications. There was a steering committee with representation from multiple areas, including IT, HR, comms, and regions within the organization. So this hybrid approach with a day-to-day owner, but still a collaborative or committee type structure supporting them, allowing them to feed into the process. Day-to-day management owned by an editor-in-chief that falls under internal communications. Training of content owners and publishers, decentralized content management, we should say, so people could own their own content, but still use one platform and one set of rules, follow one policy and one overall governance model. IT would train the people then take responsibility for their own content, and some of those rules are baked into the templates and the content management system. This ensures that content is accountable to someone and it's up to date. It's written for the web, written appropriately and not just reproduced print, and appropriate for the audience. The owner maintains the vision and mandate, focuses on policy and project prioritization, think apps and redesigns and the like, monitors performance against objectives, and of course is responsible for budget. Keep in mind though, this is not just an IT project. It's not just a technology project. People and process, they're always going to be there as your organization evolves. So as we like to say, the intranet is a process. It's not a project. And we represent the life cycle of an intranet or any project as this iterative wheel. This is the first ever intranet project methodology, which I developed at the outset of the company back in 2001. And note, we represent it here as an iterative wheel, because once you go live with a brand new intranet, your work is just starting. The content involved, integration with tools, engagement with employees, it takes a lot of work. A great award-winning intranet usually takes years to get to. Certainly the content does. So your work never stops. And at every step of the way, you need to understand what senior management wants, what employees want. And usually we start a project with assessment, what we call assessment, to understand what's there today, what needs improving, what's working, what's not, and what do people think about the intranet today, the digital workplace today, how the tools interact. Again, the digital workplace is not a replacement for the intranet. It's always been there. It's the sum total of all your digital tools, including the intranet. And where it works best, of course, is the intranet is the gateway to those tools. So we ask employees, we ask staff, what is working, what is not working, through surveys, through focus groups, through log analysis and metrics, through usability testing. What content is the priority for you? What tools are you using? What's missing? What do you like about designs? We show different intranets and say, what do you like about this one? What don't you like? What can you see for your organization? We talk to senior management and we spend time with them and say, what do you want? What do you expect? What does the business need? What are your priorities? What's not working well today that we need to improve? And we put it all together in a business requirements analysis. And then we can score it so that senior management, going back to that executive champion, can see at a glance where we're at today. And don't worry, the average intranet that we score for our clients scores around 3.5, maybe a little bit lower, in fact, out of 10. But that's okay. That's why they hired us, right? They need to get to 7, 8, 9 out of 10. Very difficult to get to 10. Haven't seen it yet. Perfection is difficult. But yeah, the average intranet would probably score between 3.5 or 4 out of 10. Great intranets are rare, and success is fleeting because that wheel, that cycle never stops turning. To get there, you need a plan. Once you do that assessment, you need to involve everyone, at least at the highest level, in the plans for moving forward. Because the last thing you want to do is come up with some design, launch it, and everyone go, what's this for? Why? You need to involve them along the way, the people, so that you ensure that you're on the right track so that when you do launch, it is a success. And of course, nothing's more important than the governance that we talked about earlier. So specifically, governance is about the people and the ownership and the management. It is independent of the technology, right? So you can set up your organizational governance model independent of the technology, and it should be. It doesn't matter whether it's SharePoint, Oracle, IBM, Adobe, some content management system, or social media platform. Governance is independent of the technology. Now, you need to implement the technology to support this and bake rules into that technology, like ensuring that every content page has an author or publisher or owner's name, every page has an expiration or a renewal date. But it is independent of that technology. And where the rubber really hits the road is around content management and the roles and responsibilities. Who's creating the content? Who's responsible for what? What dictates, or what are the measures or thresholds for ensuring or making content available on the homepage? So if I write a story or put up new content, how do I make sure that it's acceptable or qualifies for enough eyeballs to be on the homepage? And what's the policies for doing so, for writing it, for formatting it? And some of this stuff needs to be baked right into the templates within the content management system itself. What are the workflows involved for managing that content and publishing it, and even, dare I say, archiving and deleting it when it's not served its purpose? So our typical content management plan with a client may run 40 or 50 pages. That's on top of all the other plans and blueprints that we might be developing for them, depending on the complexity of the organization. People are the most important, more important than technology, to the consistent management of content and functionality on the intranet. This comes from Ray Skippa, Publications Director for ConocoPhillips, a 2 or 3-time award winner, Intranet of the Year award winner. Want to thank Ray for sharing this week, and you can read more about the ConocoPhillips intranet and their approach to it, particularly with people and content, in the feature article that I just published to intranetblog.com on people and the intranet. This is the ConocoPhillips intranet. They're a global multinational energy utility of more than 11,000 users. This is their homepage, a personalized one using SharePoint and a third-party service called Akumina. And how many people run this intranet? Well, lots of people are involved, but there are 0 fully dedicated people to the intranet. 0. No one works full-time on the intranet. There are 4 people within communications that have multi-channel responsibilities that do contribute content to the homepage, but it is a decentralized content model. There are 2 on-call IT people that are available if the need arises, but it's built in such a way that it is self-sustaining. And it's also hosted by Microsoft because it's SharePoint Online in the cloud. So the need for a big IT staff or even any dedicated person or service is no longer needed. And let's face it, IT, they're very busy people, aren't they? It's difficult to get them to work on the intranet because they've got so much on their plate. Regional communicators are responsible for subsites and regional sites and their content there, but it all falls under a central platform, an essential set of rules, and centralized templates and processes. And actually, anyone in the company can submit news or content. There are forms for doing so, and they're encouraged to doing so. And the most popular content, in fact, on the intranet is not static content like news or forums. It's actually podcasts. And they produce 4 to 6 podcasts per month over a variety of channels, about 5 or 6 different channels. And it's nothing more than plugging a microphone into a laptop, just as I am doing and broadcasting today. And they have found that these podcasts, typically about 18 to 20 minutes each, have 40 to 50% better viewership, higher views or listens than your standard static news story on the homepage. So they're doing something right, and they have no dedicated staff. So before I open up to questions, which you can use the panel here on the right-hand side for doing so, click on the question panel and submit the question online. I'll read it out and share the answer with you momentarily. Just remind you, for a reminder on future events, to be subscribed to the Intranet Insight newsletter. You can do so via prescientdigital.com. Scroll to the bottom, input your email. Bob's your uncle. Monthly newsletter with feature case studies, feature articles, notifications on these webinars and podcasts. And you could get a full video replay of last year's conference as well, the Digital Workplace and Intranet Global Forum.com, intranetglobalforum.com. That's available on full video replay. Okay, so let's take your questions here. I see none thus far. I know we were a little bit late getting started, but that's okay. That happens with these technical difficulties. So thank you for your patience in that. Let me say one more thing though about people in the intranet while we wait for any questions to come in. If not, drop me a line there or phone me there. Happy to entertain your call or query at any time. Again, never a charge to chat or brainstorm. When it comes to people in the intranet, that's where you have to start. And before you start a full redesign, you have to nail down that governance model, right? Who owns it? Who's responsible for it? Now, absolutely, you can start the process of assessment, et cetera, and then move into governance, as you should, because you need everyone's sort of input and feedback as to what's working, what's not working, before you can come up with the ideal model, if you will, right? For who owns it and the management process and all that we saw there within that example of the ownership structure at a typical organization. First question, How do you build culture through the intranet? Given the hybrid world, are you leveraging more social elements to build that bridge? How do you build culture through the intranet? Well, culture, of course, is far greater than the intranet or the digital workplace. It really has more to do with people offline and their connections and their interactions and the way things are done in an organization. So culture is really built by the sum total of the populace offline, and it mostly is directed from the senior management, right? It's the way things are done. So if it's really open and transparent, then that's going to be seen, it's going to be highly visible, it's going to be heard, and it's going to be led by your CEO or managing director in the senior management. And what you want to do is reflect that within the intranet. If it's siloed and very private with lots of sub companies that operate independently and people, there's a lot of sensitive work going on and people are hesitant to share or they can't share because of regulation, well, then that's going to be the culture. And I don't think the intranet's going to break that down. However, you can encourage stuff that you can share through the homepage, right? So one of the things you need to do is find out what people want and deliver on that. So ask them what type of news that they want. Do they want social features? Do they want commenting? If there is so, and if you're allowed to do so within, for example, a news story, encourage people at the bottom of a news story, say, what do you think? Do you agree, disagree? What recommendations would you make? And get people talking, get people commenting, get people sharing. And when you do that, hopefully you will encourage a culture of sharing and collaboration and maybe support a culture of openness and giving throughout the organization. Given the hybrid world, are you leveraging more social elements? Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? The social elements is where a lot of the collaboration comes from, because people can respond in kind, right? Absolutely. Okay. Or maybe nurture or foster, Erica says. Absolutely. Yes. Nurture and foster. That's the hallmark of it, isn't it? But emphasis on foster, because you don't want to just be synchronous communicators. You want there to be two-way conversation and dialogue, two-way communications. And therefore, you are fostering people to do so. You're encouraging them to do so. You're sending them links. You're encouraging and promoting discussion. And maybe even having contests. We have one client, Canon, of course, the camera company, that really encourages people to share their own photos from their own events, from Halloween, from Christmas, from the local baseball game. It doesn't have to be about work. That's another great way to foster sharing and collaboration within a dispersed organization where everyone is not necessarily located in one place. Okay, thank you for tuning in today. You will be getting an email with the full video replay of this and a link to the slides if you like. Watch out for that. You can also tune in to our YouTube channel, a link available through prescientdigital.com, as well as our SlideShare channel, slideshare.net/prescient, where the full slides of this presentation and other past presentations are also available. So until next month and next webinar, best of luck with your intranet endeavors. Give me a shout if you need a hand. Until then, happy intranetting.